The apartment was surprisingly spacious, especially for the price. Jake, a young man starting his life in the big city, couldn't believe his luck. He had signed the lease that same day, eager to move into a place of his own. The landlord, a gaunt man with evasive eyes, had assured him it was a steal. Little did Jake know how true that statement would become. As he lugged his last box through the door, a strange feeling washed over him. The air felt heavy, stagnant, like an old library untouched by time. He brushed it off, attributing it to the musty smell of the seemingly ancient building. He had bigger things to worry about, like unpacking and making the place feel like home. Night fell, and with it, an unsettling silence descended upon the apartment. Jake, exhausted from the day's work, tried to ignore the way the shadows seemed to dance in the corners of his eyes. He climbed into bed, the unfamiliar creaks and groans of the building lulling him into a restless sleep. Just as he was drifting off, he heard it. A faint whisper, barely audible, slithering through the wall beside his bed. He sat up, heart pounding. Had he imagined it? He listened intently, but the sound didn't return. He lay back down, telling himself it was just the stress of the move playing tricks on his mind. The next day, Jake tried to focus on work, but the strange whisper from the night before lingered in his thoughts. He found himself constantly looking over his shoulder, feeling like he was being watched. The feeling intensified when he returned to the apartment that evening. He made himself a quick dinner, trying to ignore the oppressive silence that seemed to press in on him from all sides. The whispers began again as he was washing the dishes. This time they were louder, clearer, and undeniably human. A shiver ran down his spine. He cautiously moved towards the wall, his every instinct screaming at him to run. He pressed his ear against the cold, rough surface, his heart pounding in his chest. Jake! His blood ran cold. The voice, raspy and filled with malice, had spoken his name. It was close, so close it felt like it was being whispered directly into his ear. He stumbled back, knocking over a chair in his haste to get away. Panic seized Jake. He scrambled back, his eyes frantically searching the darkness for the source of the voice, but there was nothing there. He was alone. He considered calling the police, but what would he tell them? That his walls were talking to him? They would think he was crazy. He spent the rest of the night huddled on the couch, unable to shake the feeling of dread that had settled over him. Days turned into a sleepless blur. The whispering continued, relentless in its pursuit. Each night the voices seemed to grow louder, angrier, as if they were becoming impatient with his lack of response. Jake's sanity started to unravel. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, tormented by the unseen entities that shared his space. He felt trapped, imprisoned within the very walls that were supposed to be his sanctuary. On the third night, driven to the brink by terror and exhaustion, Jake decided to confront the voices. He stood before the wall, his body trembling, his heart threatening to beat out of his chest. He took a deep breath and pressed his ear against the cold, unforgiving surface. Silence. The whispering had stopped. He waited, holding his breath, listening for any sign of the voices. Just when he thought they had gone, a voice, deeper and closer than ever before, sent chills down his spine. "We hear you too, Jake." He ripped himself away from the wall, his eyes wide with terror. He spun around, searching for the source of the voice. That's when he saw it. A small, almost imperceptible hole in the wall, perfectly aligned with his ear. As he peered closer, he realized it wasn't a hole at all, but an eye, and it was staring right at him. Looking closer, he noticed another, then another. They were everywhere, staring at him from the walls, their gazes filled with a chilling hunger. He was not alone. He had never been alone.